Okay, are you planning to see a therapist?
I've been thinking about it. I think I'm actually going to go see a therapist. Yeah.
And do you know what kind of therapist you're looking for?
I think I'll probably go with a black therapist, to be honest with you.
A black therapist, that's very specific. Why is that?
Because I think I want somebody who can necessarily relate more with my experiences. Like, I don't have to explain certain things. I feel like I just want them to have a lot more nuance or approach the therapy with me with a little more nuance, a little more understanding of what it's like to be a black man, usually growing up in North America.
But usually all therapists are trained to accommodate like different types of people. So I don't think you'll be any different.
Yeah, I feel like there's some things I do not want to explain that I would rather they already understand. So certain things like, like if you think about it in the States, with all the shooting that's been going on lately, and as a black man watching those videos or seeing them go viral, it does something to the brain. And there's certain nuances to it I do not want to explain to a therapist of a different ways. And also culturally, from where we're from, there's certain nuances that would involve our session being a lot of explanation, and I would prefer if I didn't have to explain all of that. So that's my reason. Not sure if that's the right answer, but for me, I think that's what I think would work. I feel like these are topics you have to think about when deciding who to pick as your therapist. So let's break down this topic with Nigel. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Cheers. Like, we're in North America here and you're raising a black son.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some thought processes that you have in terms of like philosophies that you're going to instill, or some things that because of society, I have to factor this in while I'm raising my son?
Yeah. Man, and I think for me, there was a period of time, like maybe December, January, and every now and again since then, like I found myself like grieving for my son's innocence in context of like, when is he gonna stop being a cute black boy? Yeah. When are you gonna start viewing him how society already views black boys or black men? When does that shift happen? I want to be prepared. I want to know. And I think it's like always subconsciously preparing him to be okay with his authentic self. That no, you don't have to be a rough kid. You being polite, you being caring, you being integral. Those things matter, and those things will keep you. Those things will, preserve you in a sense. But as like where he is now, like one of the things I'm trying to help him with is like emotional regulation. Like this morning we were doing morning routine and he was getting cereal and he wanted a particular color spoon that was dirty in the dishwasher. He threw the whole bin of spoons on the ground and started crying. And I had to get on my knees and literally walk him through that and let him know, like, I understand you're upset, but this is what you can't do that. You can't knock that down. I'm here to help you. Let's clean it up. Tell me what you want. Use your words. So like those emotional regulation skills, it's where I'm at, because as he gets older, labels are going to start be putting on him as early as maybe like 4 or 5, and he's 2. Yeah. So like he's 2 years away from like a label being put on him just because he can't emotionally regulate. And those skills haven't been developed. And I think for as well is like trying to get him to learn skills quicker, because in reality or scientifically, like the brain is not fully developed to like 25, 26. So I now mathematically have like 24 years to support him in various stages of his life for it to be cemented, for it to be concrete in his mind. And at the end, like that's daunting. That's hard because like we're flawed people, so we're not always gonna get it right, but at this stage of 2, like that emotional regulation piece is what I'm trying to support him with. And as he gets older, letting him know like, you're a black boy turning into a black man. This is how the world sees you. It's cruel, it's wrong, but this is how they see you. This is how you need to navigate and conduct yourselves, and understand that, like, as a black man, you also have a privilege. So where does that privilege intersect with how society sees you, and how do you navigate that? So somebody does something wrong to you, this is how you respond. I know you saw them respond that way. This is how you have to respond because of the color of your skin, which, again, the fact that I have to say that speaks to, like, how wrong that is and where society is. But, like, this is the reality, and I have to navigate that reality. And for him to know, like, I'm not gonna be here forever, and trying to give him as much as I can, hoping that, like, I don't have to bury my kid. You know what I mean? Like, if that day ever happened, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but like, I dread ever having to bury my kid, like my kid being one of those kids on the news that was shot by the police or was arrested or whatever the case may be. Like, I dread ever having to experience that. You know, so now it's just like, I'm starting with emotional regulation. How can we support you with what you're feeling, and how can you communicate that? How can you work through those feelings? Because by the age of 4 or 5, they're going to start labeling you, and I'm not here for that. You're not getting labeled, you know. So that emotional regulation piece, and especially, like, with the background I come from, like with education as well, like, I've seen kids being labeled, you know, ADHD, and you're sure there may be some truth to it, but, like, just that secure attachment piece, if someone just loved them in a genuine way, that would have shifted everything. And a lot of behaviors that we see with kids is just a lack of love and a lack of gentleness with them. So.
Yeah, no, you're right, because we part of this program called the Boys to Men program. It's a mentorship program where we do for young kids in high school.
Okay.
A lot of them are between the high school age. So basically, the goal is to have more positive black male role figures in their lives, and that's the goal is. And do you think that we have enough positive role models, like especially for black sons?
Man, we do and we don't. I think because of the age that we're in, the social media age, where our kids are exposed to so much. The things that a 12-year-old goes through now, I almost can't even relate. 12 years old, I was outside at a park playing Manhunt. Like, that's what I was doing. These kids now are on their phones, on their, you know, Xbox or whatever the case may be playing. Like, they're constantly in front of a screen, you know. So that when them being in front of those screens now, what are they looking at? So you're going to be looking at black men, but these black men are, you can't, like the rap music and the guns and, like, as bad as me even saying that sound, like, that's the reality. That's what these young boys are looking to. That's what they're looking at. So now, especially factoring, like, if their dads are not present in the home, and there's a difference between dads being physically present and emotionally present, because they can be present in the home, but if they're emotionally unavailable, it's just as much like you're not home kind of thing. So in terms of, like, is there enough role models, black role models? I don't think so, but they are there. And I think it's more of a having to seek them out, having programs like this Boys to Men program, like having more of those things created and implemented and shared. That is what I think at this stage is what's going to save a lot of our black men, or black boys rather. The role models are there, but you have to seek them out, have to find them, and like it all depends like your lived experience. Like, what was your home life like? Did you grow up in church? Like, you can find people there. Did you play sports? You can, you know, find role models there. So, like, there are different ways to find role models, but are these role models going to speak to what you're going through, where you're at? Probably not. So, like, black role models, they're needed. I would definitely say they're needed, just like black male therapists are needed. Like, role models, black role models are absolutely needed. Yeah.
If we could switch a little bit into something about talking about therapy. Is there something you've ever gone to? You've gone to therapy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've gone to therapy before.
And then we were having a conversation with one of our buddy, Mo. It was an interesting conversation, and he was to the argument that, so we have two arguments. The first argument that he was having was, well, as a therapist, why do I need to go and find a black therapist or a white therapist? Why can't I just go to a therapist who should, by all means, be trained to how to fix me or how to fix a white person? Same as if his argument is, if I go to a doctor, I don't go and look, can I get an Indian doctor or a black doctor or a white doctor? Why not just go to a doctor and just know that they were trained to fix me, to fix an Indian person, and to fix a white person? Why do I need the difference? Versus the other argument where we're like, okay, as a black person, I should look for, which is my argument, I should look for a black therapist because there's some certain things that I do not want to have to explain, or I don't want to focus on things that are not important or to waste too much time, so we can get to the real part. So which is why I look for a black therapist so I can quickly have the connection with them. And out of those two arguments, like, could you speak into
to both?
To both.
I will start by saying, like, therapy isn't about fixing. Therapy is definitely about journeying with an individual and not fixing, but supporting some of the lived experiences that they may have had, whether it's trauma or whether different forms of like abuse or whatever the case may be. So you're not necessarily fixing an individual. You may be, you're supporting them in rewriting some things that they may experience and being able to create something that they want for themselves. And there was something else you mentioned about, like, a doctor in terms of, like, being trained to fix a black person or a white person or address those kind of things. I think the profession is different, so as a doctor, you're looking at a human being. We're all made the same way. We all have certain X amount of bones, organs, and those kind of things. The lived experience and how the lived experience, or so to say, like how you may have been injured or whatever the case may be different, and that's where certain doctors are specialized in, right? But to the whole therapy piece, I can see both sides. Depending on the individual, it all depends on what the individual is looking for. What are they desiring? So to that, the first scenario, they may feel like they don't need someone that is the same color as their skin or same cultural background. They may be looking for someone that they can just go to and be supported in various avenues or whatever they may be going through. But I think the uniqueness of being a black individual and having a black therapist, to your point, there's certain things like I don't have to talk about. You understand. I don't have to explain. You're able to hold space for me and allow me to be my authentic self in that session, and I don't have to worry about the impact the color of your skin is having in my session. So if I was a black male, or I am a black male, so if I was having a white therapist, so to say, there may be things I have to explain. There may be a reservation, well, there is going to be a reservation that I have because of the color of your skin and what you represent in this room. So here am I as a black male, sharing my lived experience, my vulnerabilities with someone who historically has oppressed me, who historically has inflicted so much pain on previous generations and currently in my presentation of life. So that is going to impact how I share with that individual, how I show up in that room. And the fact that you would be a white person holding space for me, like, I would have my hesitations and my reservations. Now, if it was a black individual, that breaks so much stigma, that breaks so much generational trauma, so to say, that a black person is holding space for me and I don't have to be scared when I leave of what's gonna happen. I'm not going to be whipped. I'm not gonna be beaten for the things that I say in this session, because a black therapist simply just understands. They're able to articulate or resonate with what I'm sharing. So the fact that, like, in the States, so many black people, particularly males, are being murdered or experiencing police brutality, a black male therapist can relate to the feelings that I'm feeling. They can, and hopefully, depending on whatever their lived experience is, but it's just the fact that the color of your skin and your historic, like, culture impacts the therapeutic relationship. Like it's going to impact it one way or another, and I rather it be with a black therapist that relationship is being developed with than a white therapist. That's just my preference kind of thing. But to your point, I see both sides, but I understand why you, as a black man, would desire that, because there are things that you just don't have to explain. There, you can be your authentic self and not worry, and that historically hasn't been a thing for us. That we can share our emotions, we can speak up and not be demonized for it. We can share our lived experience and not be demonized for it. And just the fact that, we as our black culture, we hold secrets a lot and within our family, and having that space where we can share that with another black person who even understands that concept of why you had to feel that you couldn't share or you had to hold this secret, it speaks volumes. A white person isn't going to understand. If a black woman is in a therapist's room with a white woman, she's not going to understand why every morning I wake up figuring out how to comb my hair is so daunting. A white therapist is not going to understand that. But a black male therapist or a black female therapist, they're going to be like, I get it. Having to get up every morning and figure out how my hair is going to be combed or brushed because of the environment that I'm going into, how, the amount of misogynistic approaches or language that is, or messaging that is being communicated at in particular corporate environment that a black woman has to experience. Yeah, a white therapist isn't gonna understand that. So there are absolute benefits to being in a therapeutic relationship with a black therapist.
No, that makes sense. No, thank you for that, because that's something we would go and we had a deep argument about this.
Yeah,
it's such a big thing, because he could not see or understand why a professional, like when we're talking about a professional in the field, that's what they're supposed to do, is not capable of understanding another person's,
right.
Like, another, just because they're from a different culture or from a different thing, you can't provide them medical help, I guess. That's how he's looking at it.
Right, but you can. I mean, even in the therapy field, it's so vast. So I could be a therapist that specializes in trauma. I can be a therapist that works with couples. I can be a therapist that deals with sex. Like the occupation of it is so broad, and it can be their specialization, just like a doctor. So like you can go to any doctor and they could give you medical advice or prescribe you for something, but if you are dealing with something in your brain, you're going to need a specialist for that, a neurologist. You're going to need to go to that person. So why wouldn't you go to someone that specializes in the sense of, I'm from the same cultural background as you, I am the same color of your skin, I get it. Some of the things that you've experienced, I possibly experienced too. So that commonality is so vital. So I get it, and he's not wrong. Like, if that's his preference, like, and again, that could be due to like his own lived experience.
Exactly.
Like how he was raised, what he was exposed to. That could be reason why he thinks that way. But you as an individual, you know what you need, and if that's what you need, that's what you need, and you can't be demonized for that. No,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, no, thank you so much for this. This was a great and very insightful. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like a lot of people who are watching this would definitely get some nuggets from here. So I appreciate you for coming in today.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. So hi guys. In this episode, we are joined with a different therapist. We're joined with Noreen to talk about this particular episode we had, where we discussed the struggles of a black father raising a black child, especially here in North America, and some of the things that philosophies that he wants to instill on his kids, and some things that he's wary about. And also we discuss about a lot of black youth having the proper mentorship. And then also we discuss the idea of being specific or intentional about picking a particular therapist. So, for example, do you want a therapist that has the same shared experiences? Or should one just have an open mind and simply expect that a therapist should be well should have a lot of grasp of a lot of different situations to be able to handle different patients. So we had a little bit of argument in terms of that. And today we're joined with Noreen, who's a licensed therapist, and to give us a professional feedback on what she thought about the episode we had.
Yeah. So one of the things that stood out for me was the idea of racial socialization. So as parents raising Black kids or people of color, you have to almost prepare your kids for the world. And the idea of you see your kids a certain way, but the world sees your kids a certain way. And you have to give them that side of it as well so that they have a better understanding. Around the age of 3, kids start to be aware of race. That means it's not something that we can avoid for a very long time. It's not something that we can pretend doesn't exist, because that doesn't actually prepare them, right? But there's a difference between preparing and installing fears. And I think for the most part, the balance between that is really what's important, right? Because you don't want your kids to raise up fearing that the world is out to get them, that they're not safe, that everything and anything that they do, they'll always constantly be in danger. But also at the same time, when we do that racial socialization, I think there's a sense of pride that we can install. What are the great things about being Black? What are the great things that come with being in this skin? What are the things that they can feel proud of, right? And race is not something that's new. It's been in existence for a very long time. It's only now that we're starting to talk about it and actually put it at the forefront as part of the experiences of mental health, because when we don't address it, we're missing a nuance. We're missing an experience that needs to be addressed. And I think it also answers your question about, does your therapist need to be racialized or be Black in order for them to understand you? Yes and no. The most important thing is your intentions with your therapist. What are you hoping to get out of it? And each person is at different spaces. Just because I'm Black doesn't mean I identify with everything Black. For one, I reject the idea that because I'm Black, I have to eat watermelon. If I eat watermelon, it's because I enjoy it. Not necessarily that it's a Black thing to do. So I'm not doing it, right? But again, we're all identifying with Black at different levels. The same way you identify with youth culture differently. You'd identify with being a professional differently, right? We're talking about how do we put that to be more personal rather than a prescribed way of being, because that doesn't take into consideration the actual person, right? In terms of therapists, we are prepared to work with a variety of clients from various backgrounds, but unfortunately, the Eurocentric training is also focused on multiculturalism being just one thing, being one experience, right? You go to school to get your master's. Most people probably took one class of how to work with people that are different, is one class, because we assume all the experiences are the same. But in reality, not only does representation matter, that you walk in and you talk to someone that looks like you, but I have female Black clients that are like, when I have therapy with you, I show up with my bonnet. You don't even ask me because it's not relevant for us. They show up with their head covered. I'm just like, yeah, what's going on today? It's not a thing I'm seeing, because to me, I know exactly what's going on. She's in between hairstyles. If she was sleeping and she just woke up, it doesn't matter, right? Because that's not what they're there for. Whereas it might be something that a non-Black therapist is curious about. Whereas for me, I know unless it's relevant to what we're talking about, it's not something that we'll spend the time talking about, because you only have 50 minutes. How much can you actually cover in 50 minutes? Right? And the idea of having people that have shared walks of lives, look like you, some experiences may be the same, because you don't need to have gone through exactly the same thing to have an understanding, right? But at least have the background of why certain things are the way that they are. So then you spend less time having to explain. You spend less time having to unpack that, because it's not even for you at that point. It's for the therapist to have a better understanding.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then also, like, in terms of this, like, I guess the answer is either yes or no. like, do you have some recommendations as the places that they would go to, or like where can someone go to if they want the preference, if they want to have somebody who has the same shared experiences as them? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's not that it's not important. It depends on where the individual is at. Because if you're having difficult times with your Black identity, is it feeling safe for you to go to that space? Maybe or maybe not, right? For some people, it is becoming really important, especially if they want to talk about their racialized experiences. And within Western Canada, we're lucky to have a free clinic with Africa Center and the Alberta Black Therapist Network, where individuals can access free therapeutic services at no cost to them, virtually or in person. And that's the opportunity for them to explore that, because it's not as easy to explore that when you have to pay. It's not as easy to say, I'm going to be doing this, when each time you go, you're having to pay $225, right? So knowing that there are services within the community that allow for that. And it's not to say the services are less valuable, because these are professional therapists that are licensed and they're able to work with you with different modalities, from EMDR to CBT, an Afrocentric lens to therapy, which I think most people really value. And that is one of the biggest feedbacks that we get, is the fact that people want to see a Black therapist because they feel a sense of connection and they feel a lot more understood within those spaces.
Oh no, that's great. That's a great tool and a great opportunity for the community. I appreciate you for sharing that, and thank you so much for joining us. I feel like this gave us a little bit more understanding and gave us basically just a nice spin on our argument that we had between the both of us. And I think yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely it reduces the amount of explanation you have to give. Not saying maybe depends, like you said, it depends on what situation you are in life, but the reality is still that you have to explain a lot less. So yeah, so thank you very much for joining us today, and that was great. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you.